Good evening and welcome to Monday Night Fitba. We're in a slightly new home this week, so we're trying to adjust to our surroundings as we go here, so forgive us if we seem slightly weirdly rusty. We're coming to the end of our first season. We should pretty much know what we're doing by now, but now and again that pretense falls apart and we will see. So speaking of new homes, we have one online also, www.mondaynightfitba.com. Get on there, read the blogs from our burgeoning supply of bloggers. We've got a couple of regular Jambo bloggers now. They're well worth checking out. There's a new blog that will go up there tonight. There is a forum just waiting to be kicked off from you guys, so if you want to get in touch with us, that's an obvious place to do it. The forum at www.mondaynightfitba.com. Equally on Twitter at MNFitba. You can get in touch with us throughout the show, because the clicking you can hear in the background is me logging into Twitter. So if you want to get in touch with us, if you want to influence the discussion in any way, or just simply shout at us, Ross in particular I think might be the one that engages the fury tonight. So let's introduce the panel then. To my left, we have Jambo, Sean Meakin.
Hello.
Directly in front of me in this new studio layout, it's a bit intense, this eye-to-eye thing. Yeah. We have Ross Nichol.
Hello. And
to my right, we have Jambo, Kenny Hall.
Good evening.
So the one thing you'll notice there is it's Jambo heavy again. It's like a flashback. 9 months in the past. Kenny's not new. If you listened to the show last week, then you know that. And I know you always listen to the show, Ross, even when you're not here. So yeah, it's Jambo heavy. Partly through circumstances, but now partly through design, because what we've decided we will do, given that the Hibs content is really going to gear up over the next few weeks, and it will simply overshadow everything from a Hearts perspective. We hope there will be some big news. I'm sure there'll be some big transfer rumours, which we may get onto later, the first of many I think over the summer, but really the Hibs side of things is going to overshadow that completely. So with that in mind, we're essentially going to have we're going to have a general news roundup from the week. The first week, I think, possibly since we've been doing this show, that neither club have played, which does make it a little bit of a strange dynamic. But we're also going to try and round up the season for Hearts. A very successful season. We've touched on it throughout. We've spoken about it week after week. But we're going to try and put a bit of a full stop on this season, and then carry on that full stops into an ellipsis that takes us on to next season. So we will start to preview, we'll start to talk about transfer targets and all of those kind of things. So before we do that, as I said, we want to round up the week. The biggest occurrence this week was Rangers' visit to Dumfries to take on Queen's Park. Now, we have a Hearts only panel tonight, as we've said, so everyone in this room in theory was a neutral watching that game. But we know in reality none of us were very neutral. So what I want to see is with a view to Hibs playing the winner of that tie outright in the next couple of weeks, what did we learn from that game, if anything? Sean, what did you learn from Queen of the South versus Rangers?
Rangers are improving under Stuart McCall. I think everyone's seeing that. There's players that are playing to the slightly higher calibre that was expected of them earlier in the season. They've worked on wee bits and pieces as well. They look like they've got a little bit more from set pieces, things like that. As you saw with the free kicks, I mean, it's not a intricate, well worked set piece, but they've got someone who can strike a dead ball because they stuck one in the top corner and another one hit the bar. So they're definitely working on the things that other managers were a bit lax on previously. Also, I'm just going to say, this show has to be called The Hearts Are Having a Party, the Hibs Are in Their Bed, with no Hibs involvement this week. Completely off subject.
Okay, well there we go. We've lost all of the Hibs audience that was still present.
Yep.
Thank you.
It was going to be me that done that.
I had to get in there. Sam gave me the chance.
Right, Kenny, what did you think? Was there anything that we didn't know already? Sean's touched on a couple of things, but I think most of those, in terms of the organisation element under McCall, the focus on set pieces, they're actually just re-emphasising things that we've kind of known all season with Rangers. Was there any new strings to their bow that we could tell?
Well, I mean, in terms of the season that's gone by, they had to prove a point in the sense of going down to Queen of the South and winning, considering that they hadn't done it on both previous occasions. I think scored none, conceded 5, I think, down there. So in that respect, they had a point to prove. The big thing for me, and it's not really a new point, it's just something that's being reinforced, is Haris Vukic is going to have quite a big say, I think, in the running. I do expect Rangers to shade it, albeit I don't think there's too much between the two teams. I think he is a player who, on his game, is potentially a match winner, and he looked like he was in the mood against Queen of the South. I thought maybe solely the difference between the two. If it's Hibs Rangers, which it looks like it might be, is it going to kind of be Vukic against Allen? Potentially, I don't know, but they had to go and prove a point in terms of going down there and winning, and they did. They won ugly, which is something they've not done enough this season. We all know that. It's hence they're in the position that they're in. So
on the point of Vukic specifically, because I think you're right, there are very few danger men that you pinpoint in that Rangers team now. Vukic would be one of very, very few. If you were Alan Stubbs and you're looking at that match specifically, but also what you've seen him do over the season, firstly, how do you try and combat his threats? But secondly, we saw him utilised in a different style, or in a different shape on Saturday evening, because we saw him play up front next to Kenny Miller. Yes, in a bit of a floating role, but more as a centre forward. Where would you anticipate him being utilised against Hibs?
Stuart McCauley, I'm not. I like to look at him through the middle, I have to say. Against Hearts at Ibrox, he played just kind of off the right when he was cutting in. Ripped McHattie a new one a couple of times as well. Yep. He just seems to be at his best, I think, when he floats. He had quite a big influence on obviously the step over for, was it the first, I think? Listen, I think if you're Alan Stubbs, you've got to have some kind of contingency plan for him, definitely. Rangers are bang average. He's made them a wee bit less bang average, in my opinion. And he's a threat that I think Hibs need to combat in some way, shape or form. I think if you nullify him, you're on to a winner, in my opinion.
I'll throw out quickly as well, if he's playing down the wing, they definitely just need to, every single time, show him the line. Yes. If he goes the line, he's already shown he's no great with getting balls into the box, but if he cuts inside, he'll have a shot. And that was the whole reason that he caused Hearts problems, because he was coming inside McHattie all the time and getting the shots away, and everyone knew, apart from Kevin McHattie, that he was going to do it.
It's interesting with that in mind that I do, having seen the way he was utilised at the weekend, I do sort of maybe expect him now to play through the middle, simply because if what we're talking about there, the way he plays down the wing and he always looks to cut inside onto his good foot, probably the kind of fullback you don't want to play against is like a dogged terrier type who just is always like a yard away from you, and even if you sell him a dummy, he's just right back there. And that's kind of what Lewis Stevenson is, I think, in a defensive perspective. He's not necessarily the greatest reader of the game, he's no the biggest or the most physical, but he will just stick with you the whole time. Yeah, you'll maybe drop a shoulder and make a yard for yourself, but no for long, because he'll get right back at you. I do wonder if McCall would, maybe that's why McCall's trying Vukic inside, to see if he can actually play him off Miller, and try and draw that solid Hibs central defence all over the place. We will see. Ross, did you spot anything that you liked, anything that you particularly didn't like, or anything you would fear if, as I think we probably all will actually, if it is Hibs Rangers and you are supporting Hibs?
Well, it depends. I mean, I can see them matching their lineups. I mean, I know they slightly changed it. They went 3 at the back against Queens, and they, I think Smith was a late addition, if I'm not, 100%.
Apparently, Stuart McCall gave the nice wee quote in the press conference where he said, we were preparing, we were going to go for it, and then Mosney and McCulloch both pull up with injuries, so that's not the greatest preparation. And everyone in Scotland thought, that is the best preparation. Literally, that's the best thing that could have possibly happened to you, because it just takes that whole thing of telling neither of them that they're playing. So in terms of if they matched up man for man in exactly the same lineup, then I would go Hibs. I think Vukic, as much as I've seen him, I went down to Newcastle and seen him play a few times, and I didn't rate him then, and
he's come here, he's done okay. Nothing more than that, to be honest. He's stand out in an average team. I think Hibs have got a defence that can deal with that. Fontaine seems to have dealt with that in the past, so I don't think that there's going to be any mass problems for Hibs. I still think they'll win over the 2 legs.
Okay, let's move on from the playoff games themselves and move on to the whole, it comes with the territory, SPFL fiasco surrounding the playoffs and the ticketing aspect of things. We didn't mention it last week, even though it was kind of bubbling away under the surface, because at that point it was only really a Rangers issue, and it also remained to be seen exactly how it would play out. We now know how it's played out, which is that Rangers have been forced to ask their fans to pay. However, they have asked them to pay £5,
a whole £5,
which is obviously a very different amount than they would be asking their fans to pay in normal circumstances. Hibs have also announced their ticketing arrangements now for the semi-finals or finals, or however they're quite classifying these strange playoffs, and they have gone with £15 for adults, which is obviously still a discounted rate but is more. What are we think? Obviously, technically, we're all kind of outsiders in this, so you don't want to tell clubs how to run their own business. But what are the thoughts generally on that pricing setup? Ross, what are your thoughts, mate?
It's just the difference between the two teams, to be honest. I know what Rangers are trying to do. They're trying to create the cauldron that Ibrox maybe once was in the past, by setting up the pricing. And I can see everyone's point in terms of, should it have been part of the season ticket, should it have not? Is it the fans' fault that for instance, Rangers, they were expecting to go up by being first place? Is it something maybe you need to take into account when doing the season ticket prices in the first place? I'm in the middle, to be honest. I can see maybe a £10 minimum of a charge for tickets is not a problem. £5 for kids or something like that. But I just hope that all those people go along at this game, maybe with some neutrals as well.
Kenny, what are you thinking? It's obviously, we have to also factor in the idea that this is set against a discussion where Hearts and Hibs and Motherwell, I believe, brought up the point at the last meeting of the SPFL board about the way that the payments from the playoffs work, the fact that they're spread throughout the SPFL structure to all 42 clubs, but the clubs at the top get the most, and it kind of filters through. The teams that are in the playoffs, we believe, get a fairly, at least proportionately, a fairly small chunk of that, despite actually being the teams who have all the expenditure and everything there. I think about 50% of the pot is taken and divided amongst the rest of the clubs. Hearts and Hibs and Motherwell argued that proportion should be much higher, and were essentially looked upon as being money grabbers. However, when 2 days later Rangers decide, we're just going to let people in for free, it starts to then become an obvious picture where if Rangers were maybe getting 50% of the pot, which was a substantial amount of money, they'd be quite happy to charge their fans a certain amount. When they know they're only getting a paltry sum of 25% of whatever it is, the goodwill that we can earn by letting people in for free is worth more to us than the money we're going to make for it, so we'll just let people in for free. What are your thoughts on it? Obviously the SPFL have put themselves in a difficult situation. How should it be rectified from here?
I mean, the playoffs from start to finish is definitely trial and error, and these issues will probably rear their head again next year, regardless of the teams that are in the playoffs. So I think it's an experience that you've kind of got to learn from. Listen, the playoffs are, I think, for Scottish football a good thing, because it was dead on its feet, and it's injected a wee bit of impetus and teams. It's something for teams to aim for. Ultimately, the fans are rewarded in that sense. I liked what I read today about the arrangements made by the board at Hibs. Leanne Dempster was saying that after I think it's 50% goes to the SPFL, they're reinvesting the money in next year's budget for Alan Stubbs, which is something I don't think you would have seen previously at Hibs, which is maybe sort of demonstrates the influence that Dempster's having there. So they're kind of making the best of a bad situation, but in my opinion these things they're going to rear their head again, and it might be again and again and again before we get something that's fair for everyone. But in terms of football, in terms of on the park, I mean, I think the fans are being rewarded ultimately, because it's something that the game's needed and it's not had But again, I think it's, as I said, it's trial and error. And aye.
One more question for yourself before I move it on to Sean, because I've got some specific questions that I'm gonna drop on him. If you were a supporter in this situation, no matter what, whether it's you're a Queen of the South supporter thinking playoffs will probably be beyond us, or they're the maximum of our ambitions at least, or whether you're a Rangers fan thinking we should be nowhere near the playoffs, we should have gone up automatically, would there be an expectation on your part that these would be free, or would you expect to pay?
I'd expect to pay. Oh, absolutely. I'd expect to pay personally. I don't see why, regardless of whether you're Rangers, Queen of the South, Hearts, Hibs, it's a competitive game of football and there's a lot at stake. It's not a pre-season friendly, and for me, if it was free admission, not that it would take away from it, but it's not a friendly, it's not a pre-season tournament in Ireland or anything like that. Do you know, you've got promotion and relegation at stake here. I'd never in a month of Sundays expect to pay to go. Expect to get in for free there. Absolutely no chance.
Is there any question in your mind brought up by the fact that this is a culmination of a league season, rather than it's like the Super Bowl kind of thing? That is what you've earned your right to be. You've earned your right to be in that showpiece because of the league games that you have paid for your season ticket, rather than it being like a cup final where, well, that's completely separate. If you've not got a cup top up and all things like that, that's never going to come into the scenario. Is there anything in your mind that says you could miss the biggest game of the league season that you did pay maybe £300-400 to actually witness? Does that come into your thinking at all?
Not really. I mean, where do you kind of stop with that? I mean, that's almost like Hearts saying, listen, we're lifting the trophy against Rangers and don't bother paying, it's fine. Do you know what I mean? You can have your money back. Nah, for me it's a no-brainer on my part. There's no room for letting guys in for free, in my opinion. I think as I said, it's competitive, there's a lot at stake, and in any other sort of league or country, I think you'd be paying, so I don't see why it should be any different here.
Okay, Sean, I want to speak to you particularly about the precedent element of this year's discussion. So there was a lot of chat about the fact that, well, there was a precedent set with Hibs last season, and that Hibs fans weren't forced to pay last season. A lot of Hibs fans that I've spoken to straight away have kind of blown that idea out the water because they've said, well, last season the season tickets were on sale before the playoffs existed, because as always the SPFL were particularly prepared. So in actual fact, the Hibs fans, yes, they didn't know that their season ticket entitled them to the playoff game, but equally they didn't know that it didn't entitle them to that because the playoffs simply didn't exist. But are we being naive in looking at all of the playoff clubs in one group? As in, Hibs fans didn't pay last season, so none of the clubs in the playoffs should be forced to make their fans to pay. What I mean by that is that Hibs fans didn't pay for one home game. Queen of the South and Rangers fans in theory could get 3 home games out of this process. And equally, Hibs fans were in a very different position, as Motherwell fans will be, in that they are essentially going into this off the back of almost as pure a season as is possible. You've finished one position off the bottom. For obvious reasons, you're not going to be hugely engaged, and the money isn't going to be charmed out your pocket by what you've seen there. Whereas the teams in 2nd, 3rd and 4th, that should constitute at least a remotely positive campaign, and you should be glad to get along. Is there a difference in how these clubs should be priced as a result?
I don't know if there should be a difference in price, but there's definitely a huge difference, not only in the atmosphere of the teams going into it, but just the whole feel for the clubs in general. That was the whole thing of Hibs possibly going down last season when they were going into it. Obviously the structure wasn't there, it was just a bit of a mess, so that's why it was okay for them to get fans in for free, because if the fans had to pay for it, we could have had a fairly empty Easter Road when you looked at it, especially with the result how it ended up. Regardless, that doesn't really matter at the end of the game. But I think Motherwell are in a completely different situation. I'm 100% agreed with the fans should be paying to go to these games. Basically what you've done is you've finished your end of season, but because of that you've qualified for a mini tournament. You've qualified for your own little cup that is then an addition on top of your season ticket. It's not part of that. It's not a cup run. It's something completely different. You brought up the Super Bowl there. You don't get if you buy a season ticket for an NFL team and you get into the playoffs, you get a whole new ticket. You need to buy a Super Bowl ticket at the end of it. It's just one of those things that happens. If you're not willing to pay for that, then that's on you. You're going to miss the event. You're going to miss possibly your team going up. That's what happens. The thing that's annoyed me most with this at this moment in time is Rangers doing we'll just make it £5, which not only is them trying to get as many people through the door as possible, but it also seems a bit of a middle finger to the SFA with what they've set up, whereas Hibs are a lot more respectable with it, with their price point, because they know they're going in on a high and they are going to get people coming in.
I know what you're saying on the Super Bowl example, in terms of the point that it occurs in the season and the reason that the showpiece affair happens, but the Super Bowl obviously is a completely different level. It's a massive event. Everyone would absolutely love to be there. This is Scottish football we're talking about, and everyone is very, very quick to talk it down, and a lot of the fans, it is assumed that the only reason they're there is out of sheer loyalty. Does the game not owe them something a little bit? Should the game not be working harder to keep them on side by giving them something for nothing? Even if we think they should be paying, is that not even more of a cause to give them it for nothing, because then they'll feel like they're actually getting something back?
I don't know with that. I think the whole thing that masks this argument is the fact that the ties are played home and away. If it was a one-off tie and it was played at a neutral location, people would be expecting to pay for that. But because it's on your own doorstep and it's technically an extension of the season, that's why people are thinking, well, why am I not getting this included? That is why there's the whole argument for it. And that's what annoys me, because it's an extension of the season. It's not the season. You've no signed up for a extension season ticket as well as your season ticket. So I know what we're saying, and I know completely what you're saying with trying to reward fans and make them more engaged with the game, but that was the whole point in bringing in the playoffs. That was the whole reason that Queen of the South, they finished 4th, but they've still got a chance of going up. It's that excitement that it's a little bit more injected into the game. That should certainly, at this stage, when it's still technically beta testing, we had the alpha test last year, which was a wee bit shaky. Try this year. If it's still not working, then maybe go back to the drawing board next year. But we definitely need, the SFA need to stick to their guns as they've done just now, and it's one of the few things where the SFA I would stick by them on.
I was going to say that it's strange to hear people saying the SFA need to keep doing what they're doing.
They could have done it a lot swifter, but yeah, they've done the right thing.
Right, there's a couple of questions before we wrap up on this. Ross, are we being naive in terms of talking about charging punters, and that we are talking about having a crowd of, say we're talking about Easter Road theoretically, we're talking about having a crowd of 16, 18, 20,000 paying punters, or a crowd of the same number of people who turn up and get in for nothing? Are we being naive and expecting that those two numbers are going to be the same, whether we're asking people to pay or go in for free? And if we are we also being irresponsible in terms of the image that we project to the rest of the game, in that these are showpiece games, they're live on telly, we want as few empty seats as possible in these stadiums? If letting people in for free helps the image of the game, will we not maybe make more money long term than just asking people to pay £15 to get into the game?
Yeah, I suppose on a national scale, if you're seeing empty seats on the playoff match, and down in England it's at Wembley and stuff like that, they look at Easter Road and it's half empty. They'd be like, well, just as Mickey Mouse as I thought it was. But at the same time, I still think I'm exactly the same as Kenny, that we should be paying to get into these games. At the end of the day, you do qualify for that mini tournament, as Sean said, and we are maybe, I don't think the crowds would be the same anyway. I think if they were getting let in, you'd probably get a wee bit more than your average season ticket. But if they are paying, I think it's going to be relatively the same. I think I don't see the Hibs fans coming back this season. I think next season, if they get back in the SPL, that's when they'll all turn up. Going to the SPL team that possibly be coming down, their fans are feeling totally different. So at their side, I can imagine them letting their fans in for free simply because they're not going to turn up otherwise. So you imagine charging £15 to go and play Rangers when they probably think they're going to get beat. I can imagine every Motherwell Kilmarnock fan will be like, if we play Rangers, that's us, we're done. Personally, I don't think that's the case. I think the SPL team will stay in the SPL this season, but I can see why. I can see both sides of it, and I like the way it's gone, and the SFA have done the right thing.
That was going to be my final point. Sorry, Kenny. I do think that there should be a difference in structure. I actually think it shouldn't be one size fits all. The reason being, I think it's incredibly likely that if it happens to be Motherwell, even worse if it's Kilmarnock, that stadium will be 3/4 empty, and that is incredibly negative for the game. However, there is then the question, the sporting integrity question, of if they're allowed to let people in for nothing and they get a crowd, an artificial crowd of 15,000, or there's obviously the question of they can only, in theory, let season ticket holders in for nothing, which at clubs like that is actually a minimal amount of the attendance anyway. But would you have a concern about them artificially inflating their attendance and then them winning the game and the other club saying, well, that was an unfair advantage because they had an inflated crowd on the basis that they could let fans in for nothing, whereas we had half empty because we were having to charge people full whack?
No, again, not really. I remember 2004, 2005, I think it might have been. Hearts played Kilmarnock in the Scottish Cup, and they near on filled the Roseburn because I think, if I remember rightly, their board put on 3 buses, I think, and they filled. I've never seen a Kilmarnock support this size in all my life, and I think we drew, and then Hearts turned them over in the replay. I seem to remember Lee Wallace scored. It made absolutely no difference. I mean, at the end of the day, the game's going to win on the park, not off it. And I can see where you're coming from in terms of a difference in structure for the pricing, but ultimately it's going to be decided on the park. In terms of Rugby Park, I mean, the only time Rugby Park's full is when you have Celtic or formerly Glasgow Rangers going there and filling
3/4
2-3 stands. It's the only time I've ever seen it relatively full. Likewise with Fir Park as well, to a certain extent, because I think when Old Firm go there, they get more. I think they get the opposite stand as well as the away stand that we get. I'm sticking with my guns and saying that for me the pricing should just remain exactly the same, and the game's won on the park, not off it, for me.
I think it does a disservice to the league in general, especially for the teams who don't come up to the Premier League from the Championship, because, well, if I'm getting in free to go, now that's obviously if you were making it free to everyone, not to season ticket holders, but if it was free for everyone or really super reduced prices, and they're going to see them play against Hibs or Rangers, say a Queen of the South fan, and say they get turned over and it's a bit crap, what is bringing them back in for next time when they're playing Cowdenbeath, when they're playing a team of a lesser standard, someone who's no fully engaged as a Queen of the South fan? It's not a great advertisement of the game. They might get a result against a Cowdenbeath or someone else like that, but they're thinking, but I was seeing a much more established team and I was having to pay a lot less for it. I think it could be damaging to the game if we were to let people in for free. Okay, that will wrap us up on the general footballing topics. I can't believe that you're all so heartless establishment types. Well, after all this time you've turned your back on the fans.
Yeah, the way to tackle it, I suppose, is to just do a one-off game at a neutral venue and then charge whatever you want. I think fans will turn up to that, and then you stagger the tickets depending on who's buying, who's not.
Or a one-off game at like Murrayfield and just let's all go.
Yeah,
just everyone. It's free entry.
Free for everyone.
Like that Hearts friendly with Middlesbrough 10 years ago. That worked pretty well. Okay, right, we're going to go a quick break and then we will come back with our promised Hearts end of season review and start of the summer preview. Stay tuned to Monday Night Football on Radio Salta.